So these 10 Shanti Mantras that we are studying are the mantras for peace, which are applied in japa, in recitation, repetitive recitation as a preparation for meditation, and also svadhyaya, which means self-study. The mantra, the sixth mantra that we were studying, can be divided into 4 different sections. Each section describes, or one can say prescribes, a method, a step towards peace. And we are still studying the first section, in which the prayer is to strengthen, to thrive the physical, one can say the psycho-physical apparatus, which means the body, but not only the body, but the energies, the strength active in it, in the form of the senses, in the form of the mind, in the form of the intellect, in the form of memory and the sense of I, these energies which are active, to nourish them, to thrive them. That is seen as the first step. Then, as part of the second step, the Master describes this realization that everything is consciousness. And then the third step is the retention of this awareness, never to forget it. And the fourth step is to lead one's daily life, practical life, fully inspired and permeated by this awareness. That is when the noble virtues, the good qualities for which the word dharma has been used, qualities, virtues that help an individual to arise, which hold us from falling down. These qualities are then cultivated. May they be cultivated. So these are, in a nutshell, the 4 steps towards peace that this mantra and the unknown author of this mantra, the only mantra of which we don't know the origin out of these 10, and we know nothing about the author, this mantra. I have come to realize something. I sort of suspected it a long time, but it becomes very clear now as I'm going through several classical yogic texts and exploring not only Patañjali and Patanjali's yoga, but several other yogas. So right now I'm exploring Haribhadra's teachings on yoga. He lived approximately in the 4th or 5th century, which means around 400, 500 CE. And he's a very interesting person. He wrote many texts on yoga, some of them in Sanskrit, and some of them also in the vernacular languages of India of that time. Of course, the ones that were composed in the vernacular languages, they are a little bit difficult for me to understand, but the Sanskrit ones I can easily understand. And when I'm going through, he has a very eclectic approach towards yoga, which is really true to the spirit of yoga, that when it comes to yoga, then a person, because it's a very practical teaching. It's something that a person has to experience. Teachings inspire someone, inspire the listener to experience it for themselves, to test it for themselves, not accept anything just simply out of faith. Initially, yes, faith in the teachings, in the master's sayings are what help us to grow further, but then eventually it has to be tested on one's own experience. And what he does, which I realize now as I'm going through his text, is something that no other yogic text has done. No other yogic text. All texts are respectful to the different views of yoga. They will never really criticize, and there is a you always find this eclectic approach, but something unique what he does, he really weaves into his teachings the 4 different schools of yoga that were known to his time. Really, he weaves them into his teachings, not only just respecting them, not criticizing them, but really weaving them into his teachings. And that is what is the most important, most interesting part of this, because it shows us that there were at least 4 different schools of yoga at his time. One was and yoga, always keep in mind, it means meditation, and everything else is an instrument, is a means to achieve that meditative state. That is what it meant for Patañjali. So he is very committed to his own tradition, which is known as the Jain religion in India today, but it was simply a very ancient meditative tradition of India. If you go to the Jaina temples, and there are extremely beautiful Jaina temples throughout the country, if you have a chance, then try to visit the one at least here in Rishikesh, in the main city, and you will see that all the 24 masters of this, it is today seen as a religion, and yet it completely denies the idea of God. It is completely what you would call an atheistic religion, simply completely focused on meditation and on inner experience. And these 24 masters, you will see them always sitting completely deeply in meditation in the statues that are seen there, like the Buddha, very similar. So he is deeply committed to his own tradition, Jainism, and so he presents yoga in the 14 steps of the Jaina meditative teachings, but at the same time he also shows that how Sankhya yoga in the same way, the 14 steps of his Jainism is not fundamentally different from the 8 limbs of Sankhya yoga. Yoga in Sankhya tradition, which is Patanjali's yoga for him. So he quotes often Patanjali's sutras when he refers to the Sankhya yoga tradition, the yoga tradition within the Sankhya tradition. And then he also refers to, of course, Bhadanta Bhaskara, who is completely unknown today. His works are lost. Other than we find his teachings only in this text. And he must have been a Buddhist master of yoga. And he too had 8 limbs of yoga. So there were not only 8 limbs of yoga in Patanjali's yoga, but there were also 8 limbs of yoga in Bhadanta Bhaskara's teachings. And then he again shows that how our 14 steps and the 8 limbs of Patanjali and the 8 limbs of Buddhist yoga beautifully correspond and really speak of the same. And then the last one that he speaks of is Upanishad yoga. Yoga in the traditions of the Upanishadic teachings. And in that context, he again refers to an unknown master of those times, whose name is Bandhu Bhagavad Datta. And he seems to be, from his teachings, coming from a very strong Upanishadic perspective. He speaks of listening, he speaks of critical analysis, he speaks of meditative experience, he speaks of non-hatred, like Krishna does in the 12th chapter. So he comes from a very strong Upanishadic tradition, and he too has 8 steps, 8 limbs. And so he shows that how his 14 steps and the 8 steps of yoga, Patanjali's yoga in the Sankhya tradition, Bhadanta Bhaskara's yoga in the Buddhist tradition, and Bandhu Bhagavad Datta's yoga in the Upanishadic traditions, they beautifully correspond and in fact are speaking of the same experience, of the same truth. And he really weaves those. He doesn't only refer to them, he quotes them, but they become his teachings. They become central to his view of yoga, which is, I think, the most beautiful thing, and no other yogic master has ever done that. And it is interesting, people create legends around such great personalities, and one legend around him tells that he was originally the complete opposite. He was a very great scholar, but he wanted to defeat everybody through his scholarship, trying to show everyone his mistakes, everyone their mistakes. That was sort of his work. And the legends go as far and they say that he used to carry 3 things always: a spade, a net, and a ladder. 3 things. But before he became a yogi, but he was just a great scholar, he used to carry these 3 things: a spade, by which you dig into the earth, and a net, by which you fish, and ladder, by which you climb up. These 3 things he used to carry, and the reason was that to seek out creatures living anywhere, living below the earth, in the water, and in the sky, to find their views and defeat them, to show them the mistakes in their views. That is so, it was really like, the point is that it was really his occupation to find people and to show them their mistakes. But then, eventually, through coming to yoga, you find this radical transformation in him, that instead of looking for the mistakes in others, he goes on looking for the best in them, and not only goes on looking for the best in them, but incorporates it into his teachings. That is, I think, what yoga, by directing our gaze upon ourselves, instead of finding faults in others, it encourages us to find faults and limitations within ourselves. And when we start finding limitations and faults within ourselves, the moment we become aware that there is a limitation, there is a problem, there is some ignorance, then we undertake a genuine search for knowledge, a genuine search for wisdom. And then it doesn't matter from where it comes, as long as it fills up those gaps, as long as it enlightens those dark corners of our mind. Then it doesn't matter from where it comes. Then we become guided by the spirit of the extremely ancient yogic masters that let beautiful thoughts come to us from everywhere. That is when we become eclectic. So, of course, it is again very difficult to get rid of one's conditioning. So you see that also in him. So just to give an example, despite his extremely eclectic approach, he fails to include the fifth tradition of yoga, which is the Tantra yoga. The yoga within the Tantra Agama traditions, which speak of Kundalini and all these practices, which then come up as Hatha Yoga after the 10th century in the Natha tradition. So he not only doesn't include it, but is in fact also critical of that one aspect of yoga. And that is somehow a little bit understandable, because there were certainly in the Tantra socially unacceptable practices for which they were repeatedly criticized in India, which I'm not saying that that criticism was correct. I'm just showing that still sometimes getting rid of one's conditioning completely can become extremely difficult, extremely challenging. So if I have to show the beautiful aspect of someone, if I'm aware of any not so beautiful aspect, then I have also to point that out. And that's what I'm doing with Haribhadrasuri, that I see that sadly he failed to incorporate the Tantra yoga aspect. But this makes us certainly realize that at his time there were 5 traditions of yoga, and there were these mutually inclusive aspects going on there. So, when we are studying the Upanishads, we are not far away. That was the point, that even at his time, there were Vedantic masters of yoga who were practicing yoga, who were teaching yoga in the framework of the Upanishadic teachings. And by the way, does anyone know what Krishnamacharya was doing before he started the Yoga Shala in the Mysore palaces, which sort of was the founding ground of modern yoga, because today either it is Iyengar yoga or it is Ashtanga yoga, which seems so pervasive all around the globe, and both of them studied from him, both of them benefited from him teaching at the Jagamohan Palace of Mysore. But is anyone aware of what Krishnamacharya used to do before he was invited to teach yoga, to teach this very, it's not only physical, but yeah, it's a very physical aspect of yoga. Before he was invited to teach the very physical aspect of yoga into the Jagamohan Palace, to the princess, what was he doing? Has anybody know? Okay. He was giving lectures on the Upanishads in the town hall of Mysore. And it was then that one of his listeners, who was also a scholar, who used to come to listen to him, he went to the king and said that I think this person has a very deep and practical understanding of yoga, which is visible in his discourses on the Upanishad. So if you really want to promote yoga, I think he's the correct person for you to choose. And that is when the king of Mysore, who was very much interested in promoting the Indian, what was seen as the Indian system of exercise, yoga, very local, native system of exercise, he then invited him to open this yoga shala in the palaces of Mysore, after which he started experimenting with yoga asanas. He even went to Kaivalyadham, visited Kuvalayananda, who did amazing research work, particularly from a scientific perspective on yoga. And then, yes, he experimented a lot, freely, openly, included a lot, took a lot also from Western gymnastic traditions. A lot was included. And yes, here we are. Yes, Pratinidhi Panta's. Yes, 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 with the pool and hanging. Yes, yes. He has beautiful pictures.
See that sometime?
It's very pictures are very bad.
Bad quality, but you can. I think the title of the book is Encyclopedia of Yoga or Yogic or Indian Exercises or something like this. Encyclopedia of Indian Exercises. And it was published in the 1940s, around the independence of the country. And I think Pratinidhi Pant, this king of one region in Maharashtra, not far from Pune, he sort of collected, because he himself was in, he mentions Surya Namaskaras there, he mentions Yoga Asanas, and he mentions all the different kinds of
But then Surya
exercises.
Namaskar like in the airport.
Yeah. Was Guruji then further
Yeah.
refined it and corrected it. But yeah, that's airport Surya Namaskar. There are also beautiful Kangra paintings which I've seen just now, recently, of different postures. So the 300, 400 years old paintings of different postures. And then there are yogic murals in 500 years old yogic murals in a Natha temple in murals in the Natha temple in Jodhpur. And also asanas can be seen in, I've heard and I've not seen it, but I've read of an exhibition of pictures of these murals, either in the palaces of the Dalai Lama in Tibet, or in some other temple, ancient temple, very close by also, of asanas, specifically of asanas. Because asanas, I think, is the only aspect of yoga that can be painted, that can be presented in pictures, and that can be shown, that can be demonstrated. No other aspect of yoga. And in fact, historians say that the evolution of the photographic camera is deeply interconnected with the spread of yoga, because both somehow made the photographic camera made it possible for yoga to reach, because reading the description of an asana is first of all very difficult to grasp, and it's very boring. You know, the kind of descriptions that you find in Hatha Yoga Pradipika. It seems it's very difficult to grasp, and you actually have to see it. But once you have a picture, you have a photo in front of you, then it starts making a lot of sense.
That's why when Guruji started, there were no photos.
There were no photos.
Only a few texts. And
Yes.
that's why he is the
Light on yoga. Yes. There is one from 19. This is sort of what I'm studying these days, and I'm still trying to find that. It's from 1902 by Kshemaraja Krishnadasa's steam press, and that produced the first, but it was in Sanskrit, but it accompanied some postures with, but not photos, but just block printing, and yes. He certainly went to Tibet. Where did he go to Tibet? That is a little bit problematic. Some people say he actually went, and I don't know what actually means into Tibet, but some people say that he simply went to the area which is now Kailash, that Kailash. Some say that he went to Muktinath, and he was sent there by his teacher in Benares, because he had studied these texts, these teachings, these yogic teachings in Benares. And then when he asked him that, well, I have studied these teachings, but where can I study the practical aspect? Then his master, whom I'm now forgetting his name, he's a great scholar of Benares, he said that if you want to go and study the practical aspect, then you have to go to Tibet. And then he gave him the name of the teacher, and he found him, and he studied for him, I think, for around 2 years. But recently I have found the name of the supposed name of that teacher, and from that name it doesn't seem like he's a Buddhist, but he would have been rather a Vedic traditional master from his name, it seems. So, yeah, it seems to be true, yes. Yes. Because even when Swami Ram visited Tibet, he said that many Hindu bhikshus, Hindu sannyasis were sitting in meditation up there. So it was not only purely Buddhism up there, but Hinduism, Hindu masters were also up there. So, in any case, coming back to the mantra here, the next word that we will explore today is strength. May my limbs, if you look at the translation, may my limbs, speech, life force, prāṇa, eyes, ears, strength, and all my senses thrive. I had explained prāṇa in great detail in my last talk. If you remember the three meanings of prāṇa, the first one is the life force permeating the entire body. And then depending on the work that it does, the different actions that it performs in the body, it is divided into the 5 prāṇas, the first one of which is active in the form of breathing between the nose and the diaphragm, that is also called prāṇa. So that was the second meaning of prāṇa. And then the third meaning of prāṇa is the upward movement of this breathing. Downward movement is apāna, and upward movement is prāṇa, which means exhalation. So 3 meanings. The life force which permeates the whole body, and also breathing, and then exhalation. These 3 meanings are there, and since there is no reason to choose anyone out of the others, all the 3 meanings can be taken, because strengthening of all the 3, strengthening of the prana in the entire body, strengthening prana in its 5 manifestations, and even strengthening exhalation for the sake of pronunciation, for the sake of chanting, is meaningful. That's why all the meanings can be taken. And then the next, now eyes, ears, strength. Yes. Now comes atho, balam. Atho in the Sanskrit means and, balam means strength. The Upanishadic masters place a lot of importance on evolving strength on all the different levels, not only on one level, but on all the different levels. And this can be gathered from statements such as Nayam Atma Balahīnena Labhyah. This pure nature of the self, this true nature of the self, this true nature of consciousness cannot be experienced by a weak person, by someone who is weak. Of course, the emphasis is on internal strength, on psychological strength, on what you can call spiritual strength. But equally important is also physical strength. And one can see this, for example, in Swami Vivekananda's teachings, who again was one of the first masters to take yoga to the West. And Swami Vivekananda doesn't write it in his books, but in a biography that was written by Swami Nikhilananda about him, he's said to have held the view that a person can get closer to God by playing football than by reading the Bhagavad Gita. Yes. His biography, Swami Nikhilananda, his biographer, says that he believed this, that a person can get closer to God by playing football than by merely sitting down, doing nothing and just reading the Bhagavad Gita. Samam bonam of the yogic teachings. It's a very strong statement, but it is the kind of statement that you can expect from a Vedantin. Sometimes, and of course, what he says in one of his discourses when he was traveling in the United States, these are actually his words, that how will you struggle with the mind unless the physique is strong? Do you deserve to be called a human being any longer the highest evolution in the world? First, build up your physical strength, then only you can get control over the mind. Isn't it that the Upanishads say this self is not to be attained by the weak? So he placed a lot of emphasis also on physical strength. But more importantly, when the masters speak of bala, strength, they speak of, and this is now Shankaracharya, the commentator of the Upanishads. He says, yes, bala means physical strength, but not a kind of physical strength of someone who is physically very strong, but mentally very weak. What is the use of such physical strength? Then such a person will nothing be more than an elephant who can be guided by a tiny little goad, by holding it behind its ear. You can guide it anywhere that you want. He's extremely strong, like an elephant, but no psychological strength. And that's why such a person you can guide, just with a tiny. I think the elephant needs the tiniest goad of all animals. On one side, it is also quite intelligent from an animal's standard. An elephant is very intelligent, but still, the fact that just a tiny little goat. So what is the use of such immense strength if there is no psychological strength? So when the word bala occurs in the Upanishads, Shankaracharya says, yes, physical strength, but which manifests as psychological strength, as a capacity to understand the object of understanding in its complexities, in its great detail, not holding simplistic views. Simplistic views might be useful initially. Isn't it in science also we say that for centuries certain views worked wonderfully, but then at some point you realize, no, somewhere it simply doesn't work. And that is where then science has to go deeper, has to find a better view. And then it becomes more complex. So, generally what I see today in the name of spirituality, complexities is looked down. These are true, these are just words, complex ideas. But, yes, like people don't want to work on a physical level, they also don't want to work on a psychological level. But if asana is effort, is prayatna to develop strength on a physical level, then appreciating the complexities, going into the complexities of thoughts and ideas, that is intellectual effort, psychological effort. And only after, I think, one of the basic ideas of yoga is the effort effortlessness, the state of effortlessness, cannot be acquired by not making an effort or by giving up effort. That would be the greatest misunderstanding of effortlessness. That if effortlessness is grounded in not making effort. Effortlessness has to arise from making the greatest effort that a person can do. So, bala also means psychological strength, when physical strength manifests as psychological strength. And then, of course, the most important strength is the inner strength, if you may want to call it spiritual strength. It's simply inner strength, which means the capacity to remain on the side of what is correct and what is good in the challenging moments. Whatever the reason of challenge might be, if we have decided, if we have realized that this is the correct thing to do, then the capacity to, if we have chosen ahimsa, non-violence, truthfulness, these practices, the capacity to be with them, to remain in them, in the challenging moments. That is the kind of strength that a person develops through the practice of yoga. That is why the masters say that nasti yoga samam balam. It is Yajnavalkya, sage Yajnavalkya, also a great sage of the Upanishads, who to his student Janaka, the king of Mithila, he says this, that there is no strength greater than the strength of yoga. Remember last time how I explained that yoga evolves our body, our breath, our mind, our intellect, our faculty of understanding. It helps us evolve everything. And then the strength that a person derives from his practice of yoga is immense. It is immense. In fact, one of the meanings of the word yoga is strength in this sense. You can see passages in the Vedas where the word yoga has been used for such strength. For example, Brahma Yoga Irva Yunajmi. I unite you with the yoga, with the strength of wisdom, with the strength of knowledge, with the strength of wisdom. So there the word yoga has literally been used for such wisdom. And Patañjali too places a lot of emphasis on this strength. Because first of all, it is impossible to maintain a positive outlook under all circumstances without this inner strength. People speak of mindfulness, sati, as if it is a state in which a person has to do nothing. Just be, the way it is presented, just be mindful, just be mindful. But if you look at Patanjali's sequence of mindfulness, when he speaks of smriti, Patanjali's word for mindfulness, one of the prior stages is vīrya, which means immense effort. It is the same in Buddhism. Doesn't Buddhism speak of vīrya paramita when it speaks of the 7 paramitas, the 7 perfections? Perfection in effort. Perfection in enthusiasm. Vīrya means enthusiasm. Vīrya means effort. Tremendous effort. So Patanjali speaks of śrotram, which for him is enthusiasm. And then he speaks of vīrya, which means tremendous strength, effort. And then he speaks of smriti, mindfulness. So these are his steps in the Yoga Sutra. Shraddha, enthusiasm, deep dedication, and then effort. then a person, first of all, one has to be enthusiastic. If we are not enthusiastic about something, we cannot make an effort. So we have to be enthusiastic. And then when we are enthusiastic, then we make an effort, and resultant of that effort is then smriti, mindfulness, in Patanjali's understanding. So he doesn't use the same word that is used here, bala. He uses the word vīrya, which means you can literally translate it as heroism, the state of being a hero. Because Vīra, like Vīrabhadrāsana, in Vīrabhadrāsana. Vīrabhadra is translated as, usually in English it is translated as warrior pose, isn't it? There is no idea of being a warrior in it. Vīra simply means a hero. Of course, you can be a hero in the sense of a war, but again in the yogic traditions speak of 5 types of heroes. The warrior hero is just one type. The other 4 are a hero in knowledge. He is called Vidya Vira, a hero in knowledge. The second one is a hero in charity, Dana Vira, such as Karna. He was referred to as Dana Vira Karna, a hero in charity. And then you can be a hero in compassion, Daya Vira. You can be a hero in compassion. And then you can be, of course, also a hero in marching ahead against the enemy, that is Parakrama Vira. And then you can be Mahavira, the greatest hero, which is someone who has abandoned everything, who has severed all the connections and lives a life of total non-violence. He's defined as Mahavira, as the supreme hero, and that is why the greatest practitioner of non-violence at the time of the Buddha, a little bit elder than the Buddha, he is known as Vardhamana Mahavira. Vardhamana, the great hero, who is the 24th master of the Jaina tradition, who it says that when he was meditating in a field, the story goes that when he was meditating in a field, then the farmer had lost his 2 bulls and he couldn't find them. And when he was searching for his bulls, he saw this Vardhamana Mahavira meditating in a field, and he thought that he must be the thief because no one else is here, so he must be the thief, and he has hidden them, and now he's just faking to be a great sage and sitting in meditation so that I don't realize that he's the thief. And with that thought in his mind, he goes and he starts beating Vardhamana Mahavira, but he's completely sitting in meditation and doesn't move at all. So this is one of the legends around Mahavira, to show his tremendous heroism, in which not only he could bear the suffering that a great hero can do at war, but at the same time could also overcome the tendency to react, the tendency to fight back, the tendency to be violent as a response. That is seen as the greatest Vira. Yes? Karma Vir is there, but again karma, you see, under Dana, Daya, all these karma have come. Okay, 6th one. 6th one, yes. Shiri. 6th one. Karma Vira, a hero in great actions. But I would say that Dana Vira and Karma Vira, I don't see much difference, because karma, the moment you do it for, you can only become a Vira in karma if you are doing for the benefit of others. Then it becomes a kind of dana. Then it becomes a kind of charity. Then it becomes a kind of work that you do for others. So there is very little difference. But yes, the difference is there, so we can think of the 6th one, Karma Vira. So, Vīra simply means someone who is capable to overcome, and mostly it is understood in the sense of overcoming the internal 6 enemies, which are selfish attachment, hatred, and kama, krodha, anger, kama, krodha, lobha, greed, moha, darkness of ignorance, and matsarya, which means envy, and abhimana, pride. These 6 enemies, someone who has been able to overcome these 6 enemies, he is called Vīra. So Vīra simply means, I think a hero pose would be a better translation of Vīrabhadrāsana than a warrior pose.
What is Bhadra?
Bhadra means the auspicious hero. Bhadra means, the root bhad means happiness. So Bhadra means something that brings happiness. We will study the word Bhadra. In fact, it has been used here in amongst the Śānti Mantras. If you look at the 8th one, Om Bhadram nu apivataya vanaha. It's the smallest Śānti Mantra, but the most beautiful one. May my mind always go towards what is Bhadra. Bhadra. And there I will explain what Bhadra really means. But in short, Bhadra means that which is auspicious, that which brings joy, that which brings happiness. So Vīrabhadra would be the hero that brings happiness, the great hero that brings happiness. Vīrya, the word Vīra, is deeply related to the Indo-European root from which the English word virile, virility have been derived. It's the same origin, because there are so many words in Western languages which have the same origin, like Sanskrit words. So by looking at the origin, we can better understand. So virility, virile, that is what vīrya means, in fact, virility. So it's to translate it as warrior pose is a little bit limiting, because in the understanding of yoga, a person can be a virile person in many different senses. Okay. The ultimate power, the ultimate vīrya that Patañjali speaks of is when a person, by leading the life in accordance to these principles, he becomes capable of instilling these teachings and these principles into someone else's life. That is what when Patañjali uses, brahmacharya pratisthāyam vīrya labha, that when a person is deeply established in the niyama of brahmacharya, which means leading a life in accordance to this wisdom, because that is what brahmacharya means. Charya means a way of life that leads to Brahman. When a person is deeply ingrained and rooted in that, then he acquires this strength, which in the understanding of Patañjali is that first of all he acquires the strength to experience the truth in his life and then help others to experience the same truth in them, not by words, because there is a beautiful definition of acharya, of a teacher. There are several words for acharya in Sanskrit language. Guru is the most well-known word, which simply means light which leads away from darkness. That is, gu means darkness and ru means light. So that's all. A light that leads away from darkness. That is what the word guru means. It's a beautiful word. And that's why it has become so prominent. But another word, acharya, which is more, guru you can also use for the divine. Guru can be used for so many different things, but acharya is very personal. Acharya has to be a human being. It cannot just be used for example, Patanjali uses the word guru for the divine. I told you in Sikhism, the divine is referred to as guru, the inner master. But you cannot use the word acharya. No one has used the word acharya for the divine. Acharya is very human. It's the very human aspect. And that word means beautifully one who leads through conduct, one who leads through ideal, one who leads by being the ideal himself, by showing on himself that this is how it is done. And this, I think, even if I look back at my childhood, I think the most important teachings that I received were not in words. Important in the sense that which really convinced me, which really made all this meaningful to me, was not that which I studied from my teachers. Yes, that was part of it. But most importantly, it was by living with them, when I saw them leading their lives in accordance to these teachings, and seeing how joyful and happy it made them, and how peaceful, not even maybe joyful, but very peaceful and calm they were. That is, I think, what was the most important aspect of these teachings, and that is what an Acharya stands for. Just before I conclude, Patanjali too, I just remember, in the context of the practice of yoga, Patanjali uses the word vīrya. But now to come back to the word bala, which has been used here. In fact, I just remember that Patanjali uses the word bala, and in a very beautiful context. He says that when a person meditates on friendliness and cultivates, then he cultivates the bala, the strength of friendliness. When he meditates on compassion, then he cultivates the strength of compassion. When he meditates on joyfulness, he cultivates the strength of joyfulness. And when he meditates on forgiveness, he cultivates the strength of forgiveness. So Patanjali actually uses the word bala in these four contexts. Maitri bala, which means the strength of friendliness, by which what does the Vyasa say? Yes, the strength of friendliness, it is the strength which enables a human being to bring happiness into others' lives. It is that strength. That is the strength of friendliness, which enables a human being to bring happiness into the lives of others. Then he speaks of the strength of compassion, which enables a person to remove suffering in someone else's life. And then he speaks of the strength of joyfulness, the strength of joyfulness which enables a person there, he says, to remain joyful with both sides who are fighting, and capable of being a mediator, bringing together two sides which are fighting against each other. That is the strength of mudita bala. And the fourth one that he speaks of is upeksha bala, which gives the strength to forgive any evil committed against oneself. So he speaks of bala. Patanjali speaks of these four inner strengths, which I understand as the great spiritual strengths. When I speak of spiritual strengths as the spiritual powers, these are for me, if I don't really like that word, but there is no better word than this known to me in English language, and that's why I again and again use the word spiritual, but this is what means spiritual strength to me in the understanding of Patañjali. So bala, let this strength thrive, let this strength increase. This is the prayer that this master is asking. Indriyāṇi cha sarvāṇi, and all other senses, because they are all instruments. They are all instruments. May they thrive. Let us conclude here. Now we can start the new the second section of this mantra in our next talk. Any quick questions? Any quick observations? I've taken a little bit too much time, but okay. Last question.
Vīrabhadrāsana and Vīras, they both have a big same.
Same, but yeah, Vīra is the same in both Vīrasana and Vīrabhadrāsana. One is the auspicious hero, and the other one is just a hero. But both are heroes. And I think Vīrasana is certainly, one has to be a great hero to be able to sit in Vīrasana. It's a very challenging asana. At least for me it is still very, very challenging. Okay. Any other questions, clarifications? That yes.
So the five schools of yoga were Sankhya, Buddhist, Upanishad, Tantra,
Yeah.
and what was the other?
Jaina. Jaina, yes. At his time. These are the five.
But not Chinese.
No,
Chinese. Jain.
Yeah. Jaina. It's not Zen, because many times Jain and Zen, they sound very similar. And when I heard Zen for the first time, I thought Jain. Because I was exposed to Jainism from my childhood, but very late to Zen, Buddhism. So I thought Jainism reached Japan. But the followers of Mahavira. You usually see them in India. The monastic traditions, they are either completely naked. So either you will see them completely naked, and because they are naked, you don't usually see them. They mostly travel at night. They never travel in cars. They will always travel on foot, on the road. They will walk on foot. And usually in regions where people don't understand, no shoes, nothing, people don't understand them, they travel at night. But I've seen sometimes Jain monks walking when Badrinath opens, very early in the morning, you can see them. So either they are completely naked, or or there is the other tradition which wears completely white clothes, and they have monks and nuns both. And the best way to identify them is because they always cover their mouth with a white cloth, or with something, a white sort of mukhapatta. They always cover it like this. So that is their feature. And they have a broom. Always they carry a broom. So they clean the ground before they sit on it, so that they don't kill any. So all their practices are completely, I think ahimsa, non-violence, is central to them. All practices are just to refine ahimsa, non-violence, further. Yes?
This area goes to Rishikesh market called Jain Market.
Yeah,
Is
yeah,
this
yeah.
subdivided?
That's
Are these all
because
shops that
there are
different?
many Jainas living in Rishikesh. That's why I said there is even a beautiful temple, Jain temple in Rishikesh.
Is it close by?
Yes, Jain market is very close to the main market. It's within the main market.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
My hometown, Xinjiang province, we have border with Tibet and India. They call the young boy balam.
Balam.
don't know if this is a coincidence, but
Okay.
I found my hometown, the viewer, we are hands, so we can't understand their language.
Okay.
They are viewer, but I heard there are lots of language very
That's
similar
interesting.
to
That
India.
the young boys are called
They call
bala.
balam. And
Balam.
also they eat the food, the bread, also they call man. So a lot of, because before I don't understand their language, but now when I came back from India, I found, I can understand some.
Understands. Okay.
They-
Okay.
yeah,
Very interesting
young boys,
because
they
they
call
are
balam.
balam.
Also the food, the bread, they also call man.
Nan.
So I am thinking maybe they learn
Something.
thousands of years ago, they learned from India. Because we have lots of rings, the ancient rings.
I was even reading somewhere that in some border regions of China, they have the Holi celebration, but they just celebrate it without colors, just with water. But they still have that in Sichuan, Sichuan province. But Sichuan is Sichuan located? Yeah, in one of the provinces that is very close to India.
I mean, here also, 40 years back, Holi was not celebrated with the colors.
More
It
with
was
water.
With, rose
And
water.
with rose water and with colors, used to put flowers, tesu flower into the color, into the water, overnight soak it, and then it was played. No synthetic colors were available. So it was the colors from nature which were celebrated. Very interesting that the word bala. It would be interesting to look at the origin, because Bali means a strong young man, a strong man. That is what Bali means.
We are native in Xinjiang province. We are like immigrants from other parts, and they are really much stronger than us. And also, when before they walk, they always take a knife.
Take a knife.
So I'm thinking they call balam maybe
Because of that, because related to that, because they are so strong. Very interesting. Very interesting. Very interesting. Okay, let us conclude with the prayer for universal well-being. सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः, सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः, सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु, मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत्। ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः। My humble salutations to you.